In today's video, we're going to talk about the UFC 312 event happening this February in Sydney, Australia. Now, before we dive into the details, I have to say, this pay-per-view card might just be one of the worst the UFC has ever put together. Like, seriously, this card is so bad that I don't think anyone should pay money to watch it. If it sells more than 5 pay-per-view buys, I'll honestly be shocked. To be completely honest, I'll probably stream this event, and honestly, you might as well do the same if you don't already. But let's break down why this event is so terrible. We're going to talk about the main event, the co-main event, and all the other fights on the card. I'll also share what fights should have been on this card if the UFC had thought things through better. The main event is a mess. Let's start with the main event. This fight is supposed to be the big, exciting match everyone looks forward to, right? But nope, not here. The main event doesn't make any sense at all. The fight is between Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis, which is actually a rematch. But let's be real, nobody was asking for this fight. When you think of Sydney, Australia, you'd expect an Australian fighter or someone from that part of the world to headline the card. It's what the UFC usually does. Remember when Alexander Volkanovski fought there before? That made sense because he's Australian and the crowd went crazy for him. But here, they didn't even try to put someone local in the main event. It's like the UFC matchmakers were throwing darts at a board and randomly picked names. And let's talk about Sean Strickland for a second. Strickland is a decent fighter, sure, but he's not someone fans are dying to see in a title fight, let alone headlining a big event. This just feels so lazy and rushed. They had months to plan this card, and this is what they came up with. It's embarrassing. Dricus du Plessis is the better pick here, in my opinion, to win. I think he's improving his skills faster than Strickland is. In their first fight, Strickland's jab gave Dricus some trouble, but I don't think it'll work as well this time. Dricus will probably make Strickland work harder and keep pushing the pace, but honestly, I don't even care who wins because this matchup doesn't excite me at all. The co-main event is slightly better. The co-main event is actually decent, and that's saying a lot considering how bad the rest of the card is. It's a women's strawweight title fight between Weili Zhang and Tatiana Suarez. Now, this is a fight that makes sense. Both fighters are ranked, it's for a belt, and it's relevant to the division. But even here, I have some doubts. Tatiana Suarez is a great wrestler, but I think she's a bit overrated. Weili Zhang has improved a lot in her takedown defense since her fights with Rose Namajunas. I just don't see Suarez being able to dominate her with wrestling. Weili is more well-rounded and has better striking, so I'm picking her to win. Still, I have to give credit where it's due. At least this fight feels important, but let's be honest. One good fight doesn't save an entire card. The rest of the card is just shit. Now we get to the rest of the card, and let me tell you, it's rough. There are a couple of fun fights, sure, but nothing that screams pay-per-view. Most of the fighters on this card are either unranked prospects or guys who barely anyone knows. Like, who asked for Stuart Nicole versus Ray Sariwa. Stuart Nicole got knocked out in his UFC debut, and now he's on a pay-per-view card. Make it make sense. Then there's Jimmy Crute versus Hato Bolado. This fight was a last-minute replacement after Crute's original opponent, Markham Prochnio, pulled out. Bolado is best known for almost losing to Ihor Potieria, which is not exactly a great look. How is this supposed to get fans excited? Let's not forget Anshul Jubli, who hasn't fought in 2 years. The guy literally won his first MMA fight because his opponent couldn't handle the smell. No joke, his opponent tapped out due to smell. And yet, here he is on a UFC pay-per-view card. It's like the UFC isn't even trying anymore. Missed opportunities. What makes this even worse is that there were so many better options for this card. They could have added Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilia Topuria. That would have been a huge fight. Or maybe Tai Tuivasa versus Derek Lewis, which would have been a banger. Even a non-title fight featuring some of the top Australian fighters like Jack Della Maddalena would have been better than what we're getting. And it's not like they didn't have time to make these fights happen. UFC 312 was announced months ago, so they had plenty of time to plan. Instead, they're scrambling to put together a card that feels more like a fight night event than a pay-per-view.